Hey, it's Rich.
And Taylor with Town Wine and Spirits. With Cinco de Mayo right around the corner and warm weather coming, people are coming in and asking us about our tequila selection.
You know, the great thing though, there is such great spirits or other spirits coming out of Mexico right now, like Mezcal and Sotol. So we're gonna talk about all the different expressions and go from there.
Awesome. So the best place to start when talking about Mexican spirits is going to be tequila. It's the most obvious, it's the most iconic. So we're going to start there. We're going to talk about sort of the main, so what it takes to make it, how it's produced, all that sort of thing, the main expressions of it, and then we'll get into tasting.
That sounds great. So let's start off. There's really 5 main expressions of tequila. Blanco is a starting, it's going to be your clear spirit. That's going to give you a lot of the undertones of what that spirit is all about, the agave and so
like
forth.
The purest expression of agave.
It's definitely the purest. Yeah. That is exactly what the distiller is making and what you want to taste. Then we move up to Reposado. So Reposado referring to rest. That's going to be now aged anywhere between 2 and 12 months. We move over to Anejo, which is going to be 1 year now, or 1 to 3 years max. Okay. Then we get into extra Anejo, so now you're going to be at 3 years plus. So typically it doesn't go too far past 3 years, right, just because the angel share becomes too much when you're.
Why is that?
It's a little warm in Mexico.
Oh, okay. All right.
So yes, it becomes difficult to go that long. And the last expression would be Joven, which is basically mostly Joven referring to young, mostly Blanco with a little bit of extra Anejo to add some extra character or flavor.
Extra Anejo that's been filtered a color.
That is correct.
So it still looks like Blanco silver tequila.
Correct. There's really 6 pieces of the process of making tequila. The first one, of course, is the farming. It has to be Blue Weber agave to be considered tequila. So again, it takes anywhere from 7 to 10 years for this to mature. Right. So it's an incredibly, long process in getting to that bottle of tequila. The terroir of Mexico adds a huge difference in what that basically agave will taste like. So valley floor, hillside, mountaintop, things like that will definitely change that. Then it has to be cooked. There's a couple different processes of how they do it, but it's basically steamed. You do that to help break down the fibrous root, and at that point it goes into the next phase where it gets mashed out, the juice gets extracted, add in a little bit of yeast, goes fermentation, then it goes into distillery, so like more of a pot still if you want to think of it, gets distilled down, distilled release spice, and now you have your spirit, and that's where it either goes directly into a bottle for Blanco or it goes into an aging process to then be considered one of the others.
Awesome. So we're going to start out tasting the Don Abraham Blanco. So we decided to choose 3 expressions from the same distiller because the base spirit's going to be the same. So we really have an idea of how the wood influences the spirit by doing all the same from the same producer.
I love it. Crisp, clean, very herbal, little earthy tones.
I definitely see that. It does have a tiny bit of like sweetness on it.
Oh, it does.
Absolutely. Really open, forward.
Again, Blanco really is kind of the purest form of that spirit. Crisp, clean.
But I get the clean, fresh kind of thing is what I'm definitely getting on the finish. So this is $43. Yep. I think it's an excellent example. All the Don Abraham stuff is organic. There's very few 100% organic producers, which is kind of cool.
So the Reposado is aged for 9 months. So now we're going to really see a little bit more impact into the flavor from the wood here. It definitely has a little bit of a nice hue.
You definitely definitely picking up the color.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So the wood has definitely helped to kind of I don't want to say tone down some of the herbal component, but elevate more of a floral.
Absolutely. I definitely see that little floral note coming through. A little bit of spice on the nose. I know this sounds really odd, but I get like a tiny bit of marshmallow. I don't know. It's just kind of, but
not odd. But I think that's common with wood. You get a little bit of that creamy
but it's not
sweetness.
But it's not like it's not sweet per se.
Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah. Okay. Spicy finish and I think you're
peppery is really
pepper for sure. Absolutely.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Like you didn't expect it. I didn't really get it as much on the nose.
That's really well made. That's really a lot of fun.
That's interesting.
So we have this in stock as well. Yep. So we didn't mention the price. So the price on the Blanco is $43. Yep. This is going to be $50. So both are very reasonably priced. Some tequilas can get pretty pricey. These are both very reasonable. Yeah. All right, so now we are here to taste the Anejo. We're pretty excited by this. This is 14 months in wood compared to the 9 months for the Reposado.
It's amazing. It's 5 months more, and there's definitely a difference.
Absolutely. Like I'm getting like leather.
Yep.
You had mentioned cedar
before. I definitely get a little bit more of that. The wood influence is definitely now more present.
And I actually get I get a real pronounced marshmallow note again. which is interesting, but it's even
Even
more
your
so. I know,
marshmallows.
I like marshmallows. Wow.
All right, I am so glad we did
Yeah.
the same distiller because it's amazing just to really see the difference between the three expressions.
Absolutely.
Because now all of a sudden, like that peppery note that I really enjoyed on the back end now has like almost turned into, and you had mentioned earlier, now I'm getting more citrus. Like
Yes.
there's this,
Absolutely.
and the wood has definitely really mellowed this out. Like it's
really rounded it, softened it, but I definitely get that little burst of citrus. One of the things that I think is really especially interesting about the Anejo is it doesn't lose any of the agave forward spirit notes. Like you still get all of that, and a lot of times in Anejo, the wood can just completely take over. But here you definitely still get all that sort of agave sort of flavors on the palate. I think that's a really cool expression. This is unfortunately not in stock yet, but we will be getting it
soon.
But when we do get it,
$58. It'll be
exactly
$58.
$58. That's actually very well priced. Yeah, that's very well priced for a high quality Anejo. To introduce the category of Sotol, we are going to go to the producer Coyote, which is going to be coming from Chihuahua, which is one of the states in the north of Mexico.
Yeah, so this is actually kind of cool because most of the spirits, tequila and mezcal, are really more central and southern Mexico. And the beauty here with Sotol, it basically is very much more part of the north, or actually it comes into the United States. So they can actually grow in the U.S. And still...
there are a couple of producers in Texas that are making Sotol, which is kind of neat. I think most people that are first reading about or first it being introduced to Sotol assume that it's an agave-based spirit because the same as what tequila would be.
It looks that way, but it's not agave.
So it's actually made with a plant that's colloquially called the desert spoon.
Yep.
So it looks kind of like agave, but it's in a completely different family.
Yep.
But it's made in sort of the same way as you're going to make tequila, so the same processes are involved, but the flavor profiles are a little bit different. So they are, from what I was reading before, there are some Reposados and Anejos that would follow the same sort of designation, but it's very, very rare. Most Sotol is going to be coming in the Blanco style.
Very, very fresh, clean, herbal, earthy.
You do pick up a little bit of smoke on the nose.
Yeah.
But it's not super intense.
Well, it has a cooking process closer to mezcal.
Correct.
And I'll get into that in a minute. I love that earthy, fresh component.
Truth be told, I don't really like mezcal, which we're going to find out in a couple of seconds when I taste that.
We will.
But I really like the smoky component of this. It's really subtle. It's really beautiful.
That purity, that earth, that is really...
But it's very elegant. It's really well done.
Elegant's a great way to put it because...
It's an exceptional sipping spirit.
Yeah, really nice.
Okay, so now we're going to go on to its much smokier Mexican cousin.
So now we're on to the mezcal. So now we have the Yuu Baal. Again, this is coming in at $39.99, so $40 a bottle. Actually, there's two really main differences between tequila and mezcal. You could use any agave. Unlike tequila, get blue Weber agave, as I mentioned. But the big difference and why I think people love and or hate mezcal has to do with the way it's been cooked. Again, you need to cook the root of the agave to break it down. With mezcal, basically they build these large pits, if you would. It could be in the ground, it could be stone lined, there's different ways. But they get a fire going, they put rocks, charcoal, and then they put all of the agave on top, cover it, and they basically cook it for days.
It's kind of buried in a sense.
Oh, it's very much buried. So the intensity of the flame underneath is really, or the smoke coming off of the fire underneath is really being trapped into the agave plant. So the Sotol is done similar, but it's an open flame.
Right.
So therefore, they're not burying it. They're not keeping it on top.
So you don't get the same intensity of smoke on it.
Correct.
Because it dissipates
much
quickly.
faster. It's amazing where you clearly get that right on the nose. You immediately smoke becomes a pretty.
You definitely get smoke on this, but I'm seeing more like sort of green vegetal notes.
The vegetal notes is huge. I think there's a small floral component as well.
There's definitely a floral component.
So nice.
Absolutely. So like for me, the nose is attractive. So like I can sometimes hardly get my nose into a glass of mezcal because some of those flavors can be so intense
that the smoke is way more infused into the liquid. There's
Yes.
definitely much more on the palate than, for instance, the Sotol.
I
that you
really
get.
like that way of saying it's infused.
Because it's buried, the root before it gets then mashed,
Yeah.
basically to get the liquid out. Clearly, and it's cooked for days or weeks.
Yeah.
Like it's a week sometimes, from what I've seen, where it's a long process. So it clearly, the smoke has a major influence on what is happening with the spirit. To me, it's that earthy vegetable tone still there, a little bit of that smoke. It's really, it's awesome. I don't know.
You don't see as much Repo or Anejo, but you can see them.
Yes, they definitely have them as well, where they do age it. So at that point, they're looking to do it. But I think the idea here is you're trying to get really more of the expression of the purity of the process.
Yes,
I'm gonna say as a whole.
That's a great way.
Not just the.
Yeah.
Don't think of it as just the farming and the actual agave. This is really the
But
agave
the cooking
and
of
the
it,
process.
yes, the
So
cooking
it's,
of it makes a huge difference and impact on the flavor of it.
I think a relatively friendly
I
expression.
think this is the only way I can describe this fairly. I think is this is mezcal with training wheels. This is kind of like the Highland Park of mezcal, rather than a Lefroy.
Okay. The beauty, though, is that it's crazy to think that we've just had 3 different spirits from Mexico with 3 very different expressions, and they're all different.
They're all different.
Clearly,
Absolutely.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
5 different tastes, and they're very, very different from each
Yeah.
other. So, come on in. I know Cinco de Mayo is coming up, and I'm a huge fan of tequila and mezcal, and
I'm
now
a big-
Sotol. So
I'm definitely a big fan of tequila. I'm a burgeoning young Sotol enthusiast.
well, I'm new to it as well.
Yeah.
This is
It's the only one I've ever had, and I liked it. Mezcal, I'm certainly on the fence.
Okay.
Yeah.
So great.
Yeah.
See me instead.
Come in and see Mike. Mike loves
Oh, yeah.
mezcal.
There you go.
Absolutely.
But anyways, well, hey, thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you liked it, give us a thumbs up. If not,
Absolutely.
see you soon.
All right. Thanks.
Sure.